Hello, Jamie. I'm delighted to be here.
I love speaking to you. Every time we chat, you just casually drop in some of the adventures that you've been on. And we were just talking about, you went on a road trip.
Oh, yes. Well, I used to hate being driven. I was car sick after about 10 miles. But I was in Muscat with a whole group of friends, and one of them was finishing their tour of duty in Muscat as a sound engineer. And he said, I've got to take my car back. I don't really want to ship it and have it dropped on the quayside. I'm thinking of driving back. Would you come with me? And almost without hesitation, I said yes. And then, you kind of regret or you reflect on it afterwards. And that was such, I'm really spontaneous. If there's a challenge or adventure, I always say yes. I don't know why. I don't know where it comes from. I had a very sort of normal upbringing, but anyway, I said yes. And that entailed getting something like 12 visas, including one for a female traveling on her own, not accompanied by her husband, across Saudi Arabia.
And what did it end with?
It ended in marriage.
I just love these stories, and that was sparked from me just saying that I got engaged while I was out in Dubai. So it's interesting, isn't it, when you just start having conversations with people? And this is what I love. I think I live in a world where I pretty much just have conversations with lots of people every day.
I think it's true to say the same for me. I mean, I just love the power of communication and what it delivers. You find out so many things about people. And it's wonderful because it opens up new worlds.
Yes, and I think we live in this hyper busy world where everyone wants to get straight down to business and skip the relationship building part first, where you get to know people. And I think, reflecting on going to Dubai recently, they're very much the getting to know part is very important. Before you do anything else, you've got to build a relationship with people.
This is the crux and secret of doing business in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Because they get to know you first. If they know, like, and trust you, then they do business. And when I was a Middle East correspondent on the socio-economic development side, I would go into interviewing ministers, merchants, and members of the ruling families. And it was all about friendship first. And as you so rightly say, it fuels business.
Yeah. It's such a simple concept, but everyone's in a hurry. They want to skip past that. But if you put some effort into building relationships first and building good friendships, everything else happens quickly after that.
And you know something? That's where lasting relationships are made. Because I remember about, it's many, many years ago when I first went to Oman. And that's one of my favorite places. I met some people who are friends today, and they are in very high places, yet that friendship remains at the core, and the kind of thing where you can just pick the phone up or send an email, and it's as if all the time there's no time. Yeah. It's as if it was yesterday.
I love that. Now, I've brought you on the podcast today. A friend of mine, Stefan Melander, introduced me to a phrase probably about 8 years ago now, that structure creates freedom. And I remember when I first left the corporate world to start my own business, I felt like I could ditch the suit, stop wearing ties. I was mastering my own destiny. And I was just winging it and resisted structure. I had everything in my head and I liked it that way. And I didn't use a diary. And I was introduced to this concept, structure creates freedom. And the more structure that I brought into my life, the more it's freed me up. It's freed up brain capacity, which is a huge thing, because when you declutter stuff and get it out of your head, it's huge. But even in creating more time for myself as well. And that's the world that you live in now, Penny, isn't it?
It is absolutely the world I live in. Without a structure, you don't have a body. So if you look at your skeleton, if you don't have that skeleton, how does the flesh hold up? It doesn't.
Yeah.
And everything that I have done in my career has been based on structure. And that goes back to when I was 21 and first a trade and tech journalist and did all my training. Stories have to have structure. When you create manuals, they have to have a structure before you can put the flesh on the bones. And actually, if you take it on further in life, the people who are retired who don't have a structure don't live as long.
Yes. Yes, I agree. I've just had that conversation with someone this morning, actually. So your speciality has been for the last, is it 40 years?
Yes, so.
So in the last 40 years, you've been a specialist in the franchise industry, helping people, businesses create operations manuals.
Absolutely. And we always start with structure. I always need to start with a very simple structure, which we build up, and that becomes the blueprint of their business system. From there, you can create the content.
And I liked what you were saying earlier about helping people with their intellectual property.
Well, one of the things that happens is that as the business grows, so your intellectual property grows. It could be all the elements of your brand. It could be your brochure. It could be your marketing assets. It could be all sorts of little bits that you don't actually think of as being intellectual property, but they are because you've created them. So what you need to do is to formalize them. You need to put them in some kind of structure. So you know that all your marketing assets are in, let's say, marketing and promotion file. Then you've got day-to-day operations. They go in there. Everything to do with people and your team, they go into a different folder. And then development, growth and profit is another one. So you have everything formalized, categorized, and you can see how much you've built up. And if you imagine a multinational, how much intellectual property they have, even if it's policies, it could be a multiplicity of things. But if they don't put them in some kind of a structure, how does anyone know where to find them?
Yeah.
And that leads on to the operations manual, which is the best way, particularly in a franchise or license or multi-unit operation, where that underpins the quality standards you need across the board to replicate the same standards.
I love it. So everybody, I think businesses are usually started by entrepreneurs who are visionary people and perhaps not always detailed people. And then as they start to grow their business and scale it, they need to bring in a variety of people. And having an operations manual can feel like an overwhelming task.
It certainly is, because very often people start with a blank sheet of paper. And what happens when you start with a blank sheet of paper? Where do you start? So kind of chicken and egg. And if you've got this structure, you know where to start. You start where you find it's easiest to create the information. So, for example, if you're the kind of person who likes to talk about customer service and you can write that easily, you would start there, but it's in the structure. So you know where its rightful place is in the whole operation manual. you probably end up with the thing you like writing about least, but at least you've had the experience of writing the procedures for all the other things. But these days, we don't deal with dull text heavy manuals because they are not engaging. I mean, you tell somebody you work on operations manuals and their eyes are likely to glaze over. You know, you're not likely to be bombarded with lots of follow-up questions. If your flight attendant is probably the absolute opposite.
Yes.
So what we now do, and my huge mission is today, is to reimagine the dull text-heavy operations manual, which nobody under 40 reads, into an engaging, dynamic, knowledge-sharing environment where everybody can participate and grow. In other words, teams producing procedures on little video snippets which are uploaded to make a process, turned into QR codes, and the QR codes are put in at the point of need, the moment they're needed. So instead of trying to go through a physical manual or an online manual, you literally point your smartphone camera at the QR code and you're straight in. You go at your own pace, in your own language. It can be read, listened to, or it can be viewed.
That sounds like the perfect. There's a perception, isn't there, that younger people don't read things, that they don't pay attention, that they've got short attention span. So using the tools that everybody has, and everybody has a smartphone now, it's obvious that you would use things like QR codes to scan something that opens up the instruction manual for that specific task.
Absolutely. It is instant. Instead of having to go password protected online, then you've got to locate. You might be able to do it through search, but you've still got to go through that action of searching. Then if you search, you've probably got, I don't know, a dozen references to the one thing that you want. So you've got to look through those. So we need two things. People want information instantly. Under 40, you're the YouTube, Instagram, TikTok generation. When you get to Generation Z, you've known nothing else but a digital world. And we're about to have upcoming alpha, which are the digital natives. So this year, about 30% of the global workforce will be under 30. So if you don't use the tools that they like to use, you're not going to get that replication that you need. You're not going to get the quality standards met. And who knows where that leads.
Okay, so that's the background to the world that you work in and the moving with the times, I guess. Why would somebody want to create an operations manual? Because you're right, it doesn't sound like the most exciting thing to do. Everyone focuses on sales and marketing, not on operations. So some of the businesses that you've worked with, can you you don't necessarily need to name them, but give us some examples of the impact that having a good operations manual has had.
One is that it enables you to improve the business, because an operations manual isn't static. It needs to change constantly as you modify or improve the system. So it's a way of recording, improving, and growing the business. The other thing, it's absolutely essential for unifying standards so that everybody knows the standard they must reach in order to perform that task. It's very important for documenting your intellectual property because, and this is a little illustration of somebody who came to me and said, Penny, I'd love you to help me with my manual. And we discussed it, and he said, well, I've just come from this type of franchise and I'm now starting on my own. It's not going to be very costly because all I want you to do is to substitute my name for theirs. And I said, no way. So your intellectual property is copyrighted, and it is so important to protect your business system and your business model.
I love that, and we're building a business to add more value. That is the intellectual property. It makes your business more valuable, more saleable, more attractive, and easier to scale as well when you've got this structure in place. So when I think I see this, and a lot of people that listen to this might be young in business or only have a small team, that it helps you break out of that owner's trap where you're the only one that knows how to do stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, many small businesses are just you to begin with, and then you might get somebody else, and then it grows to, let's say, 5 people. Now, what happens if you fall sick, long-term sick? Who's going to take the business on? How are you going to fill that enormously important gap? And an operations manual is one way of doing this, because your manager or your assistant manager can come in and follow the instructions needed for every task and assign them.
I agree. You've recently published a book. Tell us a little bit about your book.
It's Manual Magic, Create the Operations Manual Your Franchisees Need to Succeed. And it's obvious, because I deal so much with franchising, that it was focused on franchises. So this is my entire philosophy of how a dull, text-heavy operations manual must be changed into a dynamic, engaging knowledge-sharing environment, and how to do it.
So I think there's a lot of people aspire to write a book. What impact has having this book had for you?
Amazing. It's really the pinnacle of a very long career. It sets me apart as being a leader in my field, if I may be so immodest as to say that. I've been known for many years as the person who creates gold standard operations manuals, and I worked with the British Franchise Association very early on, about 1989, 91, when I was made an affiliate advisor. And I worked with them on the franchisee and franchisor manuals, the code of ethics, the membership handbook, and many other things. And it cements, if you like, my position in the world of operations manuals, and particularly in franchising. But it's done other things. It's opened up so many doors. I hadn't done a podcast before, and last year I did 25. And you get invited to speak, which I hadn't done much of that. And the 15 months since I published the book has been an absolute ball, because I've had such fun. I've met so many wonderful people. You included, Jamie. There's Circle Networks, which is proving to be absolutely great. I have a few other networks which are completely different. But again, it's like having different families all doing different things and serving different purposes.
So why did you write a book then? So that's the benefits that you've had from it. What, you've a 40-year career and only 15 months ago published a book. Why now?
Well, it was due to be published in 2002. That was when the spark of information, well, the spark of the idea came through, because I'd always gone against writing books. For some reason, I thought of myself as, magazine editor, journalist. Writing books was not for me. And then the Director General of the British Franchise Association said, "Do you know, Penny, what's going to happen when all the old established hands have disappeared? How are we going to get all the information? Where can we teach others?" And I started to think about it, and I mapped out a few things, but nothing very substantial. Then 2008. And I was about to get sponsorship for this little book that I'd mapped out. And then we had the financial crisis and they pulled the plug. So it went on the back burner. Too much to do, no time to write a book. And then, of course, along came the pandemic. And I thought, well, I will start having a think about this. And I attended a workshop from Daniel Priestley of Dent International. And he was talking about key person of influence. And I thought, he says about writing a book, and that he gives away about 1,000 copies a year, and it brings in X amount of business. And I thought, well, that sounds interesting. So I put in a call later, and I said, well, where's the publishing company? And somebody put me through to Rethink Press. And I talked to the commissioning editor, and I signed a contract with them 2 months later. And that's where we are today. And I'm bringing out a new edition of Manual Magic, hopefully this year, which is for general business, not just for franchising.
Love it. I love this story. So I've got some other questions for you. One of the things that you shared with me recently was an app that you encourage people to use for their operation manuals.
Yes, it's called Book Magic. Oh, for the operations manuals.
For the operations manuals.
Yeah, right. It's not so much an app, but it's using AI to help.
Okay.
And that's, I always say use ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude very judiciously, use it ethically. It won't write something that is customized to your business, but you can use if you put the correct prompt in with the right context, it will help you. And I produced a little, I think they call them GPTs or agents or a little chat bot, which helps to create an SOP.
Okay, I like that. What's the risk for a business that's wanting to grow of not having an operations manual?
I think the risk is that all companies grow organically. There's really even the very large companies, they just grow if they're led well, managed well, and have a structure. But if you don't have an operations manual, You can't underpin your standards. Therefore, the likelihood is that those standards slip. Your standards are not the same as other people's standards. I use the analogy of when you're about 16 and you're in charge of your own laundry and perhaps buying the odd shirt, you probably get something that's drip dry. It doesn't feel very nice, but you think that it's your standard because it fulfills certain functions. When you get older, you graduate onto pure cotton, and that's absolutely wonderful. You know, it's wonderful in hot climates. It does this, this, and this. It still needs to be ironed, but you've got the time to iron it. When you perhaps when you're really at the top, you might consider silk shirts, and you can either send it to the dry cleaner, or you get somebody to do everything for you. So in all those stages, your attitude to quality changes, and what you perceive as being quality, but others don't perceive the same quality. So one of the things that the manual does, it underpins your concept of quality and what standards you require your team or teams to reach, and all the steps necessary to reach those standards. So the operations manual is not just there to tell you how to run your business, but it's how to run your business as well as you possibly can.
So if you had some pearls of wisdom to share with somebody listening to this who maybe doesn't have many people in their team, but they're inspired to grow, they want to grow their business, what would be the first step for someone to take?
I would organise my intellectual property into the folders that I mentioned earlier. I would say then start creating a structure from those folders and all the intellectual property. Get your skeleton or your blueprint for your manual, and then start putting the flesh on your bones. You can use my book because it's a step-by-step guide. And at the end, you can use AI to edit to one single voice, or you can find a professional editor to do it. But I mean, these days with apps like Grammarly, it does help tremendously. It may not be perfect, but it's pretty good with the Pro edition. So I would say just start. It doesn't matter where you start, but just start with that structure and build up that blueprint of your business. And it doesn't matter if you take your time, but small steps make giant businesses.
Okay, I love that. Yeah, and quite often for a lot of people, everyone's focused on the sexy, exciting, glamorous stuff, but it's the routine, the structure, the small things, the habits that people build that build the value in the business.
Yes, I think it was Aristotle who said something like, what gets repeated gets embedded.
Yeah, that's it. It's the simple things. Thank you very much, Penny. Where can somebody buy a copy of Manual Magic?
Manual Magic is available on Amazon. And if you just put Manual Magic with my name, it's important to have my name, because although I don't think there's another book called Manual Magic, there is something on magic for children, and I don't think that's what we're aiming at.
Love it. Right. I've loved to have you on, Penny. Thank you very much for joining us, and I look forward to having you again soon.
Thank you, Jamie. It's been an absolute delight. I've loved every minute.
Right. Thank you very much.